All right, here we go. So I've got a lot to talk about. I got too much sleep last night, Tati and Steve, as you know. I've been a motor mouth, so I'm going to try not to be so much of a motor mouth. But one of the things that happened last week, which we've talked about, is I had this incredible conversation with a round table of chief strategy officers, and it was so cool. All the different things we talked about, including not spending too much time talking about AI and automation, but talking about AI and human augmentation, one of our favorite subjects. And so when it comes to that, there's a lot of different ways to say this, but you know, an ontology aware intelligent system is a mouthful, and it is also a very exciting reality today. And I thought maybe we could talk a little bit about why we get so excited about putting some of these pieces together in a modular way, where what I just said goes from like, that sounds interesting, but very complicated and fancy, to like, hey, in retail, for example, Tati, when we merge up various data sets that perhaps historically weren't talking to each other, and we do that in a modular way with some sort of orchestration layer, developer chassis, what have you, a lang chain, and you start to unleash, these customer experiences that are so much more customized and better than some of the horrible experiences I've had lately because I'm the world's worst shopper. Um, you know, Tell us a little bit about when you think about these systems and when you think about the implications for change and how they get actually implemented, because there's a lot of change management inside of this area. How do you think companies should start the process of saying, Jazz Hands Alec is saying a lot of things about ontology aware intelligent systems that sound interesting, but like, what do we do first? Like, is this stuff real? How do we step into this without, it sounding like it's too good to be true, essentially?
Well, it's not too good to be true for one, and in very practical terms, to me, there are a couple of things. So the first one, there's these systems they create this, the something that was previously siloed. They
Yeah.
create this representation across different domains. So they customer data, product information, operational processes, employee knowledge. This pulls it together in a way that I've never seen before, and effectively and efficiently. Secondly, you have the reasoning across these domains, which is different than the previous some of these versions of, okay, maybe you had your data all together. I don't know a whole lot of companies that had a data all together, but maybe let's say you did. But now this understands, for example, how a supply chain issue might affect customer experience
Yeah.
in a very real, very numeric way. We'll talk about how employee capability affects your service delivery. And then third, it will learn from these interactions continuously, right? So it refines the understanding of your business over time. And I think that as an operating system, you have the internal and the external impact of this, right? So again, internally, you have the silos, context to employees. You ultimately enable a more integrated decision making. And externally, you really talking about the juice of this is around customer experience across various touch points, which, I laugh when you say you're the world's worst shopper, but unfortunately, I wish I could tell you that this is your problem, and it really isn't.
This is your problem, Alec. It is your problem.
And what this does is like these touch points, it will personalize these interactions, which we talk about so much, but there's so little in reality out there. A personalized interaction based on the understanding and anticipation of the needs based on the relationship patterns that this company, this brand has with you. So, and for retailers specifically, this could mean that your system would understand not just what products you sell, but how they relate to your customer segments, to your seasonal patterns, to your supply constraints, to your employee knowledge, so really, how do you leverage these things? How do you play with that? So I will pass it on to Steve to talk to us a little bit about how that comes to life on the technical side, because I think it's incredibly interesting how that happens.
Yeah, I think you described a typical enterprise retail technology environment, which is data being siloed in various different systems. I think if you think about the domain knowledge of a retailer or a product company, right? That comes in various different forms. That's certainly the brand itself and the knowledge around that, the domain specific knowledge around customer support, how that's handled, the products, et cetera. So all those are pockets of data. And I think what the tech allows us to do is pull those pockets of data together. And as you described it, Tati, create this reasoning layer or reasoning platform enabled by AI that allows us to Alec's point, kind of know the ontology of the whole business and pull those pockets of data together into one cohesive ontology. And then based on the customer interactions, the consumer experience, provide reasoning that in a typical retail environment might happen from an employee, but now we can do that within AI-enabled system, conversational AI-enabled systems, or answers that enable a employee to do customer service. So all of it's there. I think there's kind of the reasoning part of it. So the first piece is understanding the ontology, and then the second piece is like processing it based off that reasoning. And then the third piece is then how do you action it, right? How does that information then be actioned either by an employee on site or customer support person or AI digital twin? And then that eventually creates a great user experience for the end user. Combining that with really enhancing the knowledge of the consumer themselves and their ability for the retailer to know the person, know Alec and how bad of a shopper he is, and then be able to push information and push insights to that shopper based on what's happening in the store or what's happening online. So it's very powerful, and the technology that exists allows us to kind of tap into those pockets of data, plus create that ontology, that information architecture, that knowledge base of information that's specific to that retailer, specific to that brand, specific to that product set. So hugely, hugely powerful.
Yeah, and Steve, I love both answers, Tati and Steve there. But one thing you said, I think it was last time we spoke about this, you said, I think one of the North Stars of IBM, it was like, hey, there's no AI without IA, information architecture, which was really cool. And sounds a lot better than my go-to. No such thing as an AI strategy without data strategy, which they're similar. But let's just say, because I think there are people, or I'll keep one foot behind me, and I want to maintain, obviously, as always, confidentiality and judgment. But there were a number of people that I got the sense that, there's a pretty big spectrum within the executive suites of these various companies, where there are some folks that have a mindset of this is, I can feel and see where this is all headed because I've got my hands in the dirt enough where I'm using the Chat GPTs, the Claudes, what have you, the Riverside FMs, shout out Riverside FM and your magic clips and things, that they kind of know where this is all, or they feel confident they know where this is all headed. So even though we've invented, driverless cars and we don't yet have the highway, we're going to build it together. And they have that attitude, yet they operate in bigger businesses where there are others that don't have that similar sense of confidence or clarity, or perhaps they're not necessarily willing to admit what they do or don't know. They're keeping cards close to the vest. And the business is not able to step into these arenas, even though all of this is technically feasible. So I'm going to ask the question to you, Steve. Just like if, let's say we had a person, right? And that person's like, hey, all that jazz hands, Alec, ontology-aware, intelligent system stuff, let's do it. I want to step into it. Like, where do we go from here? How do we start? And what would be your kind of answer to that? I know you need a lot more information to be able to answer that question in an accurate way. But if someone's like, "Hey, lean in, let's go. What are we going to do next?" Like, how do we? What's the counsel?
Yeah, one of the things we talk about a lot is the pace at which things are moving and changing in the AI world, and the fact that it's hard to keep up. Yeah. It's hard for all of us who are
One of the things that I love about what you talked, and we've spoken about this so many times, is this idea of things that are properly scoped, right? Are you finding the right problem? Are you defining the right things? Because that tends to be oftentimes where it gets lost. But the key piece to that, and referring back to what you're saying, why do you need domain experts? Why do you need people that are connected to this and understand? Because you can only properly scope the problem if you understand what technology can do, what the solution can be. And so it's a little bit of the chicken and the egg in that sense, but at the same time it isn't, because you do need to understand exactly, and these problems that you're referring to are problems in retail that are shared by every retailer out there. We looked at, I think it was up to 15 different things that we said, all right, what are we looking at? Inventory management, we're looking at returns, we're looking at loyalty, personalization, enhancing customer experience to increase customer lifetime value. We're looking at process mining and operational, reducing operational inefficiencies and bottlenecks, et cetera, et cetera. All of these things have to be properly scoped. So I think the fastest wins there, and which is why it's gone from months to weeks, is that idea of the modular approach. How can we, have these use cases that create operational efficiencies in weeks? It does take, on the customer experience part, it will take potentially a little bit more than that to show the impact, which is really important piece of the conversation. It may take a couple of months to show impact on your KPIs, but you will see the impact on your bottom line and or your top line almost immediately from when you do this, because it will change the way it's happening, right? So that BCG report we talked about on AI value says that if we focus on, if leaders focus on fewer, higher impact opportunities, they can expect twice the ROI compared to these organizations working in multiple simultaneous pilots. So again, it's a limited, focused approach really to accelerate timelines, it does limit some of the impact. And it's counterintuitive to what some organizations, I've been ringing that bell for a while, and everyone I talk to in leadership, and I was at a board event last week with various board members, and we're talking exactly about that, about how this is different than the way they've managed before, where they really manage with these 18 to 24 month pilots and big timelines. We're looking for something very different here, in addition to a overarching philosophy and objective. So the days of the long AI, year-long AI pilots are over.
Yeah.
It's modularity, rapid iteration. That's the new standard.
Love it. Do less, better. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Tati. Be in touch.